if you're okay with that, there's enough microphones for us to do it.
We actually didn't want. I think the podium might just be there for us.
It's for the questions. Yeah, he already told me that. Yeah, I already got that all primed and ready to go, so no worries. Okay. No worries at all. We got this. How you feeling? Right here. Check out what she's wearing. Alright.
We are, and one person talked to us and it was gone. It was the whole thing was real.
Your intelligence doesn't enjoy your style.
Thank you. Thank you.
In front of the microphone?
Because I think we're going to go to Wednesday. I'm pretty happy about that. You know, when it's
That's one of you. Come on.
Come on, we have to actually go in.
Just smiling. You can do it right now and everything. Weird faces and that. Hey, Rich Ray. Yeah. All right. Stand right over here. If you'd like to go behind the table, you're welcome to do that as well.
Oh my gosh.
I don't think we should be in front of the table. That seems awkward.
Yeah. There we are.
So much fun.
Oh, no problem. I would have been at home not working on my new project.
Right? So
this is so much better. I'm in a real bad spot for writing.
What are you working on? Are you on a
I just, no, I just got approval that we're moving into edits on book 3. So now I'm working on. I don't know if I'm contacted. I have some ideas. I'm here.
You're the one who said it before. Yeah. How was it? Yeah.
It was April 1st, April 30th, and I honestly can't. I'm trying to practice in my mind how to say.
What are they gonna not accept it? You know what? Wait, you know what? They'll take 10 points off. That's really not much you can do.
But I just feel bad, you know, like you're right.
Calibrate what you say a little bit different. You didn't so cool.
No.
All these guys.
Well, they all so I guess more than 200. Or maybe they were hoping
I think it's hard to
and it's beautiful out, right? And it's what
yeah, there are other
I've thought about when do some, well, not that she will but to help bring the brand through the transition, and not that she can't do it, but I mean, she went and lived with her husband. But he was always, that was like 2 or 3 years ago. No, I don't know. But also, the thing is, he was always the chef. And her mom was always the cook. And so she's going to have enough of like, now being alone again. She's never been primary cook in her house.
That's why takeout was invented.
Well, exactly, but also when you have Uncle Alex, sort of like help put a couple of meals in the freezer and have a reason for mom. So that it's just like all.
Hey, how's it going? All right, ladies and gentlemen, or people, thank you. I'm learning. People, it is great to see you. Thank you so much for joining us today and for your patience as we got everything started. My name is Darren, and I think this is pretty much the last you're going to hear from me, except for some logistical stuff later on. But I'm one of the people in the blue shirts. If you ever have any trouble finding your way around, we're going to talk about it in a minute. Look for our blue or black shirts with YANOVCON on them. They may say staff or volunteer. We're all here to help you, and don't feel bad about grabbing any of us at any time. And that's it.
So we are so excited to welcome you to YANOVCON 2019. This is our 4th annual Young Adult Novelist Convention. So we're super excited to have you here. We have a full list of authors here with us, and we'll introduce them all in just a second. In case you didn't know, we did have a couple authors not be able to make it today. Erin and Trada Kelly and Nina LaCour will not be joining us, which we will miss them, but we have awesome authors here, and Alex Gino just came on, so we're so excited to have them here. Like within 3 days. How cool is that? So let me introduce our authors in hopefully alphabetical order. You know, this is a library after all. So we have Adib Khorram, Akemi Dawn Bowman. You can raise your hand, because I don't think you're in order. Oh, okay.
We're hanging out here with the trash.
Yeah. Alex Gino, Brandy Colbert, CJ Watson, Dashka Slater, E.E. Charlton Trujillo, Lisa Moore Ramey, Heidi R. Kling, Jesse Andrews, J.H. Deal, Kayla Kagan, fellow Kayla, Kristen Elizabeth Clark, Lisa Super, Marjorie Katanalu, thank you. I knew I would mess up one name. Marco Shiro, Meg Medina, Matali Perkins, Randy Rebay, and Robin Benway. So we are so excited. Let's give them that. So for the authors that are going to be at the opening panel, you can go ahead and sit down.
So this is probably your only opportunity to see all the authors together. Take your photos now. Just a little bit if you'd like to take some pictures or anything. Oh yeah. Please.
Name tag. Make 2 rows. I know, I just go in the front row. That's what I always do.
You make a pyramid.
Okay, good.
Maybe we should like start here and then look across the room.
Like panning?
Yeah, like take photos here and then look back this way. Like we're not all looking at the same time. This is awkward.
Take a picture of you guys.
Everyone look over here. Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. You put it down because you put this drive everywhere.
I don't know. Let's probably.
Oh, I'm not one of the, but sure. You told me to do it.
Exactly.
You guys all trying to straighten
I wanted all of you to get in one picture.
Someone take the photo. We can all look the same direction.
Why don't 2 people sit right here, then we'll sit. You're supposed to sit down. Come on, someone else is supposed to sit here. Mark, so does someone sit? They're telling us to come sit. Windows, scoot in, windows.
Yeah. But can you guys just do one favor for us? Could everyone put their phones up like you're taking a picture?
Yes.
Like everyone, and then I'm going to take a picture of you taking a picture of us, and we're going to just do it. Right? Got it? We're going to, it's like obnoxious. This is like, really weird. This is YANOVCON USA.
Like, I've had this one, yeah.
All right. I hope everyone got their photos. Yeah, we're good. All right. So authors that are not on the opening panel, you're welcome to hang out or go back to the green room. But if you're on the opening panel, go ahead and have a seat.
I'm getting out of here.
And now that we've introduced our authors,
No, I want
Oh, wait, I have
my bottle.
Your bottle.
Sorry.
See you later.
There it is.
My bottle.
Okay, wait, where's
I need this.
You don't understand.
Because it doesn't have buttons. Oh, that one might be mine.
I just
Somebody's bottle. Maybe it's mine.
all right. All right.
Where do you want to
So we still have some more to tell you before we get started. Can we turn this on? Okay. So we're going to have our opening panel start in just a second, but before we do that, we just want to go through some logistics. So we're starting with the opening panel here, as you know. And then after that, we're going to have the announcement and reading of our teen YANOVCON short story contest winners, which is going to be really awesome. After that, you'll have 3 panels to choose from for our first breakout session. Those are in your program, so make sure you take a look. There's a map in the program, and people will be out directing you. So just look for someone in the blue shirt. We can point you to each room that you need to go. After that, we'll have another breakout session with another 3 panels you can choose from. So lots of really great panels. It will be hard to decide. I'm sorry, but you're going to have to do it. And then we're going to have an author one-on-one, and that will be separated into 2 separate rooms. So in your program, you'll see which authors will be in which room. Choose the room that you would like, and then stay there. You'll get to talk to all of the authors in that room, but you can't flip between rooms, okay? And then after that, we're going to go back into the library room, which is over here to the right, and then that's where the all-author book signing will be. So you'll get to get your book signed and get to talk to authors, even if you don't have a book to sign. You can get them to sign your program, whatever you have, whatever you want. They're the booksellers. You probably saw them. They're also outside of the library room. And then if you didn't check in, we want to make sure that you check in. It's by the front door of the library. That's how we get our funding, is how much participation we have. So if we want to have this again next year, we really need you to sign in. You'll get a little hand stamp if you haven't already. So please do that in one of the passing periods that we have. And then bathrooms are located in the library to the right. So if you go through the 2 slidey doors in the library, they're located to the right. And I think that's it. I want to have Kat come up here and thank everyone for us, because we have a lot of awesome people that helped us pull this off.
All right, I have to do the PSA part of this. So before I do that, I have 3 incredible people that are enjoying us. Can Christy, Ina, and Adriana stand up, please? Woo!
Stand up.
All right, these 3 people are bloggers. And they are the moderators for our panels today. So if you could all introduce yourselves with your blog handle, please.
I'm Christy, and if you find me online, you'll see me as Diamond X Girl. I also blog on Book Crushin', and I moderate a lot of panels here in the Bay Area and like to travel and moderate panels in other places as well. So I'm thrilled to be here. It's my 4th year at YANOVCON, my 3rd year moderating. Thank you.
My name is Enna. I am the blogger for Enna Reads, and I've been blogging for a couple years now. Thank you to Christy, who got me started into this. So this is my 3rd year at YANOVCON moderating, and aside from reading books and fangirling over every kind of book possible out there, I'm a science teacher at a middle school.
I'm Adriana, and I am Salty Badger Books. This is my first year at YANOVCON and moderating. Thank you, Christy. I read pretty much everything from middle grade to adult to, I don't know, children's books, so that's what you'll find on my blog. And I have a boring desk job, so that's how I get a lot of my book listening done. I listen while I'm supposed to be working, but don't tell my boss that.
All right, so this event wouldn't be possible without the San Mateo County Libraries, Ben Park Library, the Redwood City Library, the San Mateo County Library, the Burlingame Library, the San Bruno Library, the South City Library, Bay City Library, Books Inc., Trader Joe's, Pete's Coffee, Dean's Produce, Star Vista Crisis Center, Star Vista Insights, Felton Early Psychosis, Palo Alto Mental Foundation, Common Air, Office of Diversity and Equity, San Mateo County National Alliance for Mental Illness, and the Carmont High School. Thank you very much. Let's get started.
All right, so our opening panel, Christy Hayes will be moderating it, and then we have Akemi Don Bowman, Adib Karam, J.H. Deal, and Marco Shiro. So let's give them all a warm welcome.
Are our mics on? Yes. Are you guys all working?
I'm pretty sure.
All right.
I hope so. Oh boy, that's loud. So I got the microphone with the weird fuzzy thing that looked like a beaver ate it. I don't know what's going on here, but it's.
We picked that just for you.
Oh, I feel so special now.
Thank you all for being here with us. I'm so thrilled to talk about teens and resilience. As a person who gets to know teens pretty well here in the Bay Area, I lead, in my non-bookish life, I lead an organization called Counseling and Support Services for Youth. We work with mental health in schools in the South Bay and part of the peninsula, so I'm thrilled to be here and talk with you all about it. So each of your books has a centralized theme of resilience, whether it's through their friends groups or their family or their community, however they might define that. And I'm interested in hearing from you about your teen experience and how that shaped your story, and what does teenage you need to hear that maybe you weren't ready to hear then?
No.
We can go down the line, or anybody can jump in. It's up to you.
You better decide for us, because we're authors and we don't know what to do.
Well, let's start at the end.
Oh, I knew you were going to say that. Okay. The question is, what about my teen experience that I wish that I'd known?
And what did you bring to your story in your experience?
Yeah, so I think I had one of those experiences as a writer that is maybe not uncommon, that you find out what you're writing about after you've written it. And so my book, Tiny Infinities, just started with me seeing an image in my head of two girls holding glowing fireflies in their hands when I looked at a drawing that my daughter brought home from school. But the story that I spun out followed a competitive swimmer the summer she's before 8th grade, when her family is falling apart and she's taking care of her mom who's suffering from depression and trying her darndest and thinks that every breakfast she makes and every load of laundry she does is going to help heal her mom, and it's very frustrating to realize that can't happen. After I'd written the book, I realized that this story tracked, it's not autobiographical, but it tracked some of my core emotional experiences from when I was Alice's age, from that same summer, and so that it had a lot of my emotional truth in it. And I also managed to channel my considerable social awkwardness into her best friend. That was actually fun.
My turn? Okay. Yeah, my books kind of, they have a lot of messy family dynamics, and I think like teen years and things like that, I think just experiencing what it feels like to have found family and to find friends that sort of make you feel like you do have family if you don't really have that naturally. So yeah, I think that's kind of the focus. Yeah.
Wait, but what did teen you need to hear?
Teen me needed to hear that that family doesn't have to be defined by blood, that you can find it, and you know, it's okay to find the people that make you feel comfortable and things like that, and yeah.
So my book, Anger is a Gift, a lot of it is actually very autobiographical. So I think the thing that I brought to it is that I wanted to write a book for kids who don't really get a choice about having to be socially active because their lives are already political just for being who they are. All of the characters in Anger is a Gift. The book is set in West Oakland. I lived in Oakland for 5 years, and I'd never seen a book for kids set in that neighborhood. And so while my teenage years were spent in the desert in Southern California, the like demographic of who I went to school with looked a lot like Oakland, and so I wanted to have a story set where people who look like me and my friends and talked like us got to be part of an adventure and a coming of age story. So that being said, the thing that I drew on most is that I had a very non-traditional teenagers. I got kicked out of my house when I was 16 for being gay. That meant I had to become an adult when I was 16 and start paying rent and have a job and those sort of things. And so all of the sort of typical teenage experiences that I would see in movies or read in books about you get to do this and you get to fall in love and then you get to go to prom and do all this, I didn't get to do any of those things, or at least not in the way that I wanted to, which was with another boy. And so I really wanted to write a story for those people who have experiences that put them on the margins, where your thing may not be typical, but that doesn't mean you don't get a story. I think the thing teenage me needed to hear was that you'll be okay being yourself. And I think a lot of teenagers in the age that I grew up in, you know, I was a teenager from 94 to... I'm gay. I don't do math. I don't know. It's like, I'm like, how long was I a teenager for? What does that work? That period of time, you know, like I did a bunch of school visits yesterday, and all these kids wanted to know about was like, what's it like being gay? And oh my God, this is so exciting. And I'm like, that is a mortifying thought that I could never have talked about that as a teenager. And so, you know, and I write from that place of like, instead of making it like an after-school special, the kids are just gay. They just are, because kids are different all over the world, and you just present them as they are. And that is sort of what I wish that I had had when I was a teenager.
What a really special experience that must have been.
It was great. I love the kids from Half Moon Bay High. Yeah, hell yeah. And Daly City. Oh, it was Westmore High School. With the view from that high school is rude. Not fair.
Do I really have to follow that up?
Yeah. I'm just going to follow you all day and say really insightful things before you talk.
How dare you?
Okay.
How dare you? I mean, my book also came from a lot of kind of emotionally autobiographical places. I was pretty nerdy and isolated, and there's a gnat buzzing around me. And I also had trouble connecting kind of with my roots and with kind of this thing that we call America. And so I tried to put that on the page as much as I could. And I think probably what young me needed to hear that I tried to get across in the book is that there are always going to be people who get you for who you are and accept you. And it's worth it to try to find those people instead of trying to change who you are.
So all of your answers kind of lead me to my next question. I love how each of you talked about finding your community and what that might look like. And so here in the Bay Area, our teens are facing a lot of different issues, from things like academic stress, acculturation, homelessness, racism, bullying, amongst other challenges, which I don't think is unique, but we definitely highlight those things and talk a lot about them here. So what are teens in your community currently facing that you're aware of? And you can define community however you want to. It could be geographic, it could be cultural, it could be sexual identity, whatever it might be. And how are you seeing them overcome or face those and find hope?
You didn't make this easy at all.
We're talking about resilience.
I mean, I could talk. So I don't live in Oakland anymore. I got priced out, which is really unfortunate. So there's a thing people are dealing with, and it's really sad because I loved living here. It was one of my favorite places I've ever lived. But talking about what's happening in Oakland. A lot of what is in Anger is a Gift is based on both my experiences as a teenager at a school with a resource officer. And if you're not familiar, if you happen to be one of the people, they're actually quite common here in the Bay. This is a police officer who is on campus all the time and generally handles disciplinary issues. So I had kids ask about this yesterday. They're like, what does that mean? Like, what did they handle? And I was like, oh, if you got in trouble, you generally got arrested and were put into the juvenile system. By the time I was a senior in high school, I'd been arrested 4 times. Once for throwing a piece of paper and missing it going in the trash can, because that's littering. By the way, I'm glad you all have that reaction instead of like someone, I did a school visit once and they were like, well, why did you throw the paper? And I'm like, okay, anyway. So that is it is a very common experience in certain parts of the Bay where certain schools have metal detectors or they have resource officers. And those kids have no real outlet to actually do anything about it, or at least they don't think they do. But they do. And in part of what I was writing the book was addressing that experience of like, there are ways you can be a teenager and change the world. And there are ways that you can be an activist and change the world, and you don't have to wait until you're older. Because that was something I was told all the time, like, you'll get older and you'll understand this. And then I got older and I was like, I was right! That was terrible! Like, that's one big thing that even to this day, kids are still dealing with.
Absolutely. I work at a high school where they have a resource officer, and when there were a lot of school shootings and a lot of things happening in the last year and a half, the solution from the community was, let's add more. And I'm like, we're mental health providers. Yeah. Let's add more of us instead. So it's very much a real experience here. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
I think a lot about did anyone see the video of the Swedish teenager addressing climate change at the Davos summit? I don't know how many teenagers in Kansas City, Missouri are worrying about sea level rise and all that. But it's something I think about for all the young people of like, what world are we leaving for them? You also mentioned school shootings. That's something I think about every time. I sometimes get asked, like, should young adult authors be including hard subjects in their books? And I'm like, these kids are doing active shooters drills at age 5. Like, how can we possibly write anything harder than the world we're living in? So I think about that a lot. I don't know that I have any solutions, but that's where I'm at.
I live outside Washington, D.C., and I think that all of the issues that you named are things that kids are dealing with where I live, and there's a lot of income inequality too in the general DC area. There's a huge there are many issues surrounding immigration status for students. At the high school that's nearest me, somebody has been teaching a peace studies class for a long time, and students there are known for walking out of class or staging various protests. And I think they've slowly gotten the school board to come around to allowing excused absences for kids who, for matters of conscience, decide to leave class to join the many protests or demonstrations that happen in DC for various issues. So I think that's positive, to allow teens to take a stand and have their voices heard. So I've noticed that. But I think many of the issues we're talking about have to do with feelings of otherness, and they're just, or the root of so many things that are represented in YA literature, or issues that you end up dealing with at your high school have to do with feelings of otherness, maybe they could be said to have in common. And I was thinking about that on the way over here, at how many sort of infinite permutations there are of ways to feel other when you're growing up. When you're an adult too, but especially when you're growing up. And I think those feelings are magnified. I really liked in your book, Anger is a Gift, the way you used.
I forget people have actually read it. I'm just like,
I've read all your books. They're all amazing books. I highly recommend Starfish, Anger is a Gift, and Darius the Great is not okay. He's definitely not. I think I really appreciated the way you used sort of descriptions of kind of quotidian activities, making tea, having dinner, doing sort of the daily things to kind of lodge the reader or ground the reader into the experience of the character as just sort of a normal, universal person, even while poor Moss is having these extreme experiences. So I thought that was well done.
Yeah, we talk about community and stuff. I live in a very rural part of Scotland, northern Scotland, like past the Highlands, and it's mostly white. It's very quiet, and it kind of amplifies even more how important it is to have books and stuff that act as mirrors for the people who don't get to see that in everyday life. Whether it's being multiracial like me, or having like a mental illness. I think it's just super important. I think that's something that a lot of teens obviously, you know, identify in different ways, and they need that. They need to be able to see themselves reflected. So, yeah.
I think it's interesting how each of you talked about unique things, but also there's a lot of commonality, right? We talk about that a lot here, especially where we have communities like East Palo Alto where 60% of the population is homeless, and then you literally drive across a bridge, and I mean, the kids are, there's a lot of stigma around mental health and all of those things, so it's really interesting that there's otherness, but also there's a lot of commonalities. So thank you for sharing. So who do you hope finds your books, and what do you hope that they take from them?
I hope the kids who find my book are kids who have experienced separation and divorce and mental health and what it's like to grow up with a parent or another family member who's suffering from depression or facing another mental health challenge. I also, since I wrote about a swimmer, I like to think that it's a book for anybody who's involved in a sport or passionate about a particular activity, because I think that being engaged in a sport or being engaged in some other kind of group activity when you're growing up can help to anchor you through a tough time.
Yeah, for me, I hope the readers that find my book are people that just need to feel seen more than anything. I think that there's people who exist in intersections. You know, you've got discussions about, you know, mental health, you know, sexuality, race, and things like that. And sometimes when things are overlapping, you need that specific understanding of stuff. Even Starfish, for example, is about a girl who has a mental illness, and her mother also has, you know, her mental health is, you can tell that there's more to it. And it's an intersection. It's somewhere where, you know, it doesn't always fit neatly in a box of, you know, this is how you should act if you have this kind of anxiety. So yeah, I hope that people pick it up and see their own story, and it helps them feel like they're just not alone in what they're feeling.
I mean, I more or less feel the same thing. You know, especially as someone growing up, and the first time I read a book that had a brown character in it I was 14. So that means I went all those years without having anyone like me in a book. And I tell this story, and I'm giving you all permission to laugh at this, but the character I most identified with until I was 14 was Speedy Gonzalez. Like, because I was like, he's brown, and he's basically Mexican, and like, I had, you know, other people be like, that's cartoon brown, that doesn't count. You know, like, that's not real. But I didn't have anything, and when I read The House on Mango Street by Sandra Cisneros, it changed my life, because it was that moment of, oh, wait, we get to be in books? Wait, we get to write books, and we can put Spanish in them, and we get to deal with these things? And I think for me is, you know, having that experience of when a kid comes up to me and says, I didn't know I felt this way about the world, or I didn't know you could write about panic attacks. I didn't know you could write about depression. I've never read anything where someone feels the same thing that I do. And it's sort of related to like your first question, what did you wish you knew? So I wrote a book that I wish 15-year-old me had, where someone just said, these things might be difficult, but it's okay, and you'll make it to the end of it. So yeah, very much that like, there's something beautiful about seeing your story for the first time, but told by a total stranger.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm at a place now where I'm less thinking about people who have similar experiences to Darius, reading it and seeing themselves, and I'm more interested in kids who are different seeing that. Like, does anyone know if Mike Pompeo or John Bolton have teenage children? Like, I feel like maybe some of the people that are making our policies toward other countries would do well to read about the humanity that exists beyond our borders. And so when I was in college, one of my very good friends unthinkingly once just spouted off that he hoped that the United States went to war with Iran so that the price of oil went down. And I was like, what? And we like talked it out. It's fine. Like, we're still really good friends. But we deconstructed what had happened. But I think if people paid more attention to humanity beyond our borders, that everyone would be a little bit better off.
We're going to send them a signed copy just for that, right?
Yeah.
All right. So one thing that we don't talk enough about in contemporary is world building. And I feel especially in the books that are represented here, the world building aspect is a really important piece, right? It sets everything up. And so I'm really curious about your world building process.
Okay, you made it sound so you go first.
Oh, I was just laughing at anyone describing what I do as a process.
Oh, okay.
It can be less process-like.
That's fair.
Right? No, it was complete accident. Like, anyone who thinks I know what I'm doing is sadly mistaken. Lots of creeping on Google Street View through the streets of Yazd. That was a big thing. Instagram, Pinterest, all that good stuff.
Yeah, but the world in your book isn't just the physical location. It's the cultural location, too. So tell us about that.
Now you're putting me on the spot. Now I'm... Right. Everyone look over there. It's J.K. Rowling. She's come to join us. A lot of it I just drew from my own experiences, honestly. I think world building in contemporary is such a weird thing because it is our world. But depending what lens you look at our world through, it can change the way you see it. And so it was figuring out what details to include and what not to include. And for me, at least, having an editor helped with that a lot because she was really brilliant.
Do you have any family members that had picked it up and had thoughts?
Yes, and I haven't asked after any of those thoughts. So far, the few that have reached out have said how much they liked it. So that was very nice and obviously very good for my ego.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, I agree with Adib. I think a lot of it's just pulled from experience and stuff. Summerbird Blue takes place in Hawaii, and that's where my dad and all his family is from. And it's pulled from memories of like sensory stuff. You know what I mean? Like the sights and smells and the food and stuff like that. And I think it just kind of comes across naturally for me anyway, rather than like if you're working on a fantasy and you're like plotting stuff and thinking of all these different words. It's more just from memories, I think, and your experience.
Was there one experience that you included that was really special to you?
One of the characters is Mr. Watanabe, and he's a neighbor, and he has a garden of orchids that he takes care of, and that's what my grandpa used to do. He's still to this day. He's older now, but he crossbreeds them, and so he's really technical about it. But so that's in there.
That's really cool.
Your grandpa.
Yeah, he's very cool.
Everything I had written actually prior to Anger is a Gift had always been from a speculative fiction angle, where you have to world build if you're doing science fiction, particularly secondary world fantasy. And a little known fact is Anger is a Gift actually used to be a science fiction dystopia. Ask me about it later. Anyway, so I come from that space of you have to world build, and so when I made the decision, very painful decision, to turn it into a contemporary novel, I still kept all those same tools of how do you build a world. So I had to assume someone reading this book had never been to West Oakland, and then I found out from living in West Oakland and in downtown Oakland that if you live anywhere outside of Oakland, you don't go to it. I would have friends who'd be like, "Oh, that's far, isn't that like 3 hours away?" And I'm like, I could probably see your house from my house. It's not that far. And so I just went in with the assumption that there is a flavor and a specificity to Oakland that everyone needs to have. So part of it is naming real places. Farley's Coffee Shop, which is on Broadway and Grand in Oakland, is a fairly large part of the book. I just found out Brown Sugar Kitchen closed in Oakland. I want to punch everyone. I'm so mad. I love that place. But there's a very pivotal emotional scene that happens at that restaurant. And part of it is because that restaurant is a cultural institution. And there is a reason it is in West Oakland. And there's a reason why it does so well in that neighborhood. So I have those things. And then some of the things that I invent is talking about there's a scene where one of the characters has had a very bad day, so they go to Lake Merritt and they talk about how you can fake yourself into thinking you're in this calm, wonderful environment as long as you ignore the smell. And that's like a very specific thing. And then people are like, "Oh, Lake Merritt's nice, but it smells," and they've never been to California, and they just know that that's a thing. So for me, that's where I did some of y'all know what that smell is. It's in your head right now, and you're like, "Ooh, that's terrible." So that's what the world building is. It's like you take. I like that you call it's a sensory thing. Like the smell part of Lake Merritt is so specific that anyone who's been there it's just now in your brain. You're going to think about it for a week. It's terrible. But I think that stuff is really powerful to help someone feel like they're in a place and it's a meaningful part of the story.
Oh, I don't know if I have anything good to follow that. I set my story sort of around the place where I currently live, and a lot of the action takes place at a community swimming pool, and it's modeled on the pool that my family went to and still belongs to. So when I really needed to feel that pool, I would go to the pool and swim. And my main character is kind of mad that her parents are splitting up, so she goes and she lives in a giant tent in her backyard. And so as I was saying at my school visits yesterday, I have her living in this. I did all this research on Renaissance fair tents and really sort of splendiferous tents. That was kind of fun. But of course, I don't have one, couldn't afford one, so I went to Target and bought a cheapo tent. And then I slept in my backyard, so I could experience what my character, how hot it is, what she would hear at night, all the air conditioners. I mean, I don't know if this is an answer to your question or not. It wasn't so much world building, but just trying to represent in a realistic way what the character would experience. So yeah,
that's really great. So what were your favorite books growing up, or other media? It doesn't have to be a book. And what do you think those stories bring to youth today?
Also, as I was saying at my school visits, I loved books with maps in them. I mean, it's weird that I've written a couple of picture books too. Every book I write is realistic fiction, and I loved fantasy when I was growing up. And as I said, I grew up BHP before Harry Potter, and so I read The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings 4 times between 4th grade and 6th grade. I had that on one of my slides yesterday, and the librarians who are here know that. And that was I had a map of Middle-earth on my bedroom wall. That and Alice in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass. It's not a coincidence I picked Alice as the name for my main character. So I would say those were huge influence. And then I went through a big science fiction phase when I was about 12. So I don't know why I'm writing realistic fiction. Yeah. Okay.
I vote for a realistic fiction getting maps, for sure. I'm a contemporary reader. I don't read fantasy, really. And we don't have cool swag or maps or anything like that. We need them.
Actually, my work in progress is definitely having a map. Yeah. So
I'll be waiting.
Yeah. My probably my favorite book growing up was The Golden Compass. It was the Philip Pullman's, right? Yeah. And I think it was this idea of this like a whole nother world, and it was sort of like this escapism thing that you could read something and feel like you're transported from all your problems in life and whatever. And I also really liked Nancy Drew, and it wasn't until I got older that I was like, I think those were the books that kind of showed me that I did not see myself in them at all. And that was sort of the thing that I was like, why am I not writing like half Asian characters like me? And yeah, so I think that had a big impact on my writing as I got older. But
I've never really been asked this question like in this context, and I was thinking about it, and I was like, okay, what did I like as a kid? Before I read, House on Mango Street. So I was reading pretty much split down the middle, Harlequin romances. That's a fun, and lots of horror. Which are grossly incompatible and have nothing to... the first adult book I ever read was Stephen King's It. I was 8, and I understood about 20% of it, and then I got older, and I was like, oh, that's what that scene is. Oh, that wasn't subtle. Okay, never mind, that's what that's about. But I think about how all that stuff... the other big thing was The X-Files. I watched The X-Files in real time, all 9 seasons, every single episode. And I think about how those three things have affected everything I've written, and I realize even with the contemporary, I love writing really creepy, thrilling things and then kissing. And that's, if you've read Anger's a Gift, that's Anger's a Gift. My second book, oh my God, it's Kissing and Nightmares. My third book is The End of the World and Kissing. Like, I just love that contrast of like, even when horrible things are happening, you can still have a connection with another human being.
I thought your descriptions of kissing and anger as a gift were pretty good.
Which is weird, because someone once asked me at like one of these like festivals, they were like, oh, so was this your experience when you were a teenager? And I was like, no, my first kiss wasn't until I was like 19, almost 20 years old. So I'm like, that means I write good. Oh, that's pretty cool. So anyway, that's where that dichotomy, I should not have read Harlequin romance at 8. That was anyway.
You shouldn't have read Harlequin, but you're okay with reading it?
Yeah, that's backwards. Yeah.
That's true. I read a lot of Stephen King when I was younger, and V.C. Andrews, so.
Oh,
all
boy.
Bad. All bad.
let's make the panel about that. Let's talk. No,
I don't know who that is, and I don't care to find out.
We're gonna let you that phase. You skipped it, and you can't go back.
You like messy drama. You need to read.
Okay, I do like messy drama. This was probably going to be like a huge surprise to everyone here gathered, but I really liked Star Trek when I was growing up. I have found that it has impacted my writing. Not that I write science fiction, but that I literally end up writing characters who sit around a table and talk their problems out instead of fighting ever. And I was thinking, oh, they literally all act like Starfleet officers. That's what's going on here. I also really loved the Phantom Tollbooth. Oh, yeah. As a child, I was crippled with ennui, and so I really identified with Milo, and I really like to eventually write something that kind of makes people feel the way the Phantom Tollbooth made me feel.
I love it. All right, so for the audience, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to ask one more question. They're going to answer it briefly, and then we're going to ask you all about your questions. If you want to ask a question, though, I'll point to you, and then you have to come up to the podium so that we can all see you and the lovely cameras can see you. So just to give you a heads up. Start thinking so we don't have the awkward silence. All right, so last question, quickly, because we're talking about reading. What have you read recently and want to put in everybody's hands?
Oh. I just, right before I came here, I just finished I Wish You All the Best by Mason Deaver.
I want that book. You can put it in my hands.
No, it's at home. But it's about a young non-binary teen that comes out to their parents and gets kicked out of the house and finds like new life and love and friends and found family, and it's really sweet and wonderful and like a little bit southern and charming, and it's really exceptional.
Shout out to Mason if you're not already following them.
Yeah, you should follow them. I have the cool story about Mason, which is that I met them at YALFest when they had the draft, and they're like, I don't know if this will ever get published. And I'm like, I want this book. This is going to happen. And then it was like a year later that their deal got announced. I was so happy.
And then we went and had ice cream at YALFest this year.
Yeah, we did. It was beautiful. Okay, so I... are they in here? Are you in here, Randy? Great, I'm going to embarrass Randy. Randy Ribe is here, wrote a book called Patron Saints of Nothing, and I got it a few weeks ago, read it in one sitting on a plane, and there is not a YA book published, will be published that is like it. It is absolutely incredible, about the war on drugs in the Philippines, about a kid whose cousin is murdered. It's an extrajudicial execution, and this teenager gets to the Philippines to solve the mystery of his family. Oh, it is just incredible. It is amazing. And then I'm not done with it, but I just want to really quickly put this out because it comes out in like a week, and it is not a YA book. It is definitely not a YA book, but it's called Red Leopard, Black Wolf by Marlon James. He is a literary author who decided he wanted to write basically what if Game of Thrones happened in pre-1500s Africa. It is the wildest book I've ever read. It's basically like what if the Canterbury Tales was told by someone who is both high and drunk and can't stay on topic. But it's also an African fantasy. It's one of the best books I've ever read in my entire life. And what's it called? I'm getting the colors mixed up. It's either Red Leopard, Black Wolf, or maybe it's Black Leopard. That is the correct. Black Leopard, Red Wolf. It's a fantasy trilogy. I can't even begin to it's wild. It's wild.
I'm watching all these people add it to their Goodreads right now.
It's incredible.
I want to go back to Randy really fast. If you don't know, Randy's actually a local author, and I actually just finished After the Shot drops yesterday, and I'm so excited. Yeah, so you will not miss him.
Yeah, the book that I read most recently was actually Darius the Great Is Not Okay, and it is incredible. If you guys haven't read it, you really, really need to. I just finished it like 5 days ago. So, and I think the other one that I really like is, and I read it a while ago, but Nimona is just a graphic.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
It makes me feel so happy. I don't know how to explain it, like just the humor in it and stuff and the drawings. It's just a nice, cool book. I can't even really explain it to. It's like an evil villain wizard type thing who has like an apprentice, and just things keep going wrong, and yeah.
If you ever get a chance to meet Noelle, it's just such a match.
Yeah.
So I think I answered this question already. Because I would recommend the 3 books by my fellow panelists, which are really the 3 most recent books that I've read. I've read Starfish on the plane coming from DC here, and I finished listening to the audio version of Anger is the Gift, and I have Darius the Great sitting on my nightstand that I've almost finished at home. And it's very wonderful meeting all of you in person and hearing your speaking voices, but it's also really truly a treat to get to meet them as writers and hear their writing voices, and I can't recommend all 3 books highly enough.
I should also note you've actually heard my speaking voice because I do the audiobook.
Yes, I recognize it.
So good.
Got hired at the last minute. It was terrifying.
Yeah.
It was great. The audio is really great.
Yeah.
All right, so we're not going to have that awkward pause now as I find somebody to call on. Oh, wow. See, look, we got it. All right, come on up.
Yes.
Hi, thanks. Since it's on resilience, I'm sure that none of you got to be published authors without a fair bit of resilience along the way. So my question as a parent of a minor child author who has a couple of completed manuscripts is, what is the first step you would take, because she doesn't want to go towards the self-publication? What is the first step you might take? And secondly, if you know anything out there that's for children authors, because everything that we see is always geared, like, it's either short story contests or adult author contests. It doesn't seem to be anything for children writing long stories and series. Thank you.
Well, I do a fair amount of teaching. If you want to email me or come talk to me afterwards, I give you my card, and then I can send you some references. I think it's true that getting a book-length manuscript is. How old is your writer? 15. Yeah, I think getting a book-length manuscript published would be pretty unusual, but it's not impossible. And I can give you a list of places where you might be able to try. I guess I would recommend trying to get published in magazines first, or publishing an excerpt of the novel is probably, I don't know what your experiences are, but certainly I published in literary journals for a long time before I started writing something longer. And having those credentials can be helpful. Joining SCBWI, I don't think there's a lower age limit for joining SCBWI. I'd highly recommend that, and going to a writing conference for that. Yeah, but anyway, email me. I'll talk to you.
Yeah, I went slightly the more, I guess, traditional publishing route where you write a book, rewrite it, then get an agent. And I was rejected over like 700 times when I was trying to get an agent. So it's not to discourage you, it's to say that, rejection is very, very common. And I think it's something that writers just have to sort of get thick skin for that and just kind of get used to it, because the industry is so subjective, and what one person hates, another person will love. And you just have to keep trying and writing different books until you find the one that is right for an agent and editor. So, yeah.
That's good.
I always give a shout out to a blog called Query Shark, which is an excellent resource for learning about query letters, and which is how you get an agent, which is kind of the first step toward the traditional publishing path. As a minor, you can't sign contracts, so your young writer will have to be working with you a little bit, at least on the signing port. But yeah, it's not impossible, and I think I have heard about young people. Also, like the sooner your young writer learns to divorce their sense of self-worth from their writing, the healthier they're going to be long term.
Oh boy.
That's something I've been thinking about a lot lately, is how important it is for your own mental health and resilience.
I saw another hand over here. Come on up. And then I see one right there.
Right.
First of all, Mark.
What?
That smell has been in my head this entire time.
Yes, I knew it.
Really annoyed at you.
It's terrible.
It's been driving me nuts.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. Also, is this mic on? No, it's not.
We can hear you though.
Okay. Second of all, when writing a story, what is the worst piece of advice that you can give a writer, and then how do you fix it?
The worst I ever got was your first draft has to be perfect. And one of the things that I've really embraced is I am a garbage first drafter. My first drafts are terrible. They're not good. I really find a story, and I find what it means after it's done. And I don't think with the exception of one short story, everything I've ever written is very, very different when it gets to the end product. And so I have some friends who are excellent first drafters. They take a little bit longer than I do, but they that's their thing. For me, it's not. And so I had learned the advice very early on that your first drafts need to be really great, because if they're not strong enough, you're going to have to spend too much time rewriting. And that just is not, it doesn't work for me. I don't know if that works for you, if it'll work for anyone else in here, but I really love now just writing messy. Like sometimes my first drafts will just have a bolded part that's like, figure out this later, I don't know. Like that sentence wasn't even a complete sentence that I just said. And that's what I'll do, because I just know like I need to get through the story and I need to get to the end, and I might figure out what that thing is later. Which means that I have now gotten very, very fast at drafting. So I can have a first draft much quicker than my first book took 17 months for one draft. So yeah, so that was the worst for me. And I'm very, very glad I have unlearned that.
I don't want to throw any, oh, sorry. I don't want to throw any high school English teachers under the bus. But
you're gonna.
But the skills that you learn in high school to survive in high school and to write papers and then to like succeed in college, if that's where you go, are vastly different from the skills you need to write fiction. And so if you can learn to like play by those rules while you have to and then drop them as soon as you're free to do so, you'll do better. The first books I wrote, I literally avoided the word said, which is, you know, super ubiquitous in fiction writing. I tried to write really long-winded sentences, which just were impenetrable. So yeah, just know that there are the rules to succeed in school, and they're not going to always stand you well for fiction writing.
Yeah, I agree with both of you guys. I think the only little bit of advice, and it's like so tiny, is that somebody once said that you're not supposed to use M dashes, and I very much disagree.
Oh,
I love
M dashes are
pry them out of my cold, dead hands.
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
I think there are lots of forms of bad advice, or lots of detailed bad advice, but the truly bad advice to avoid is from somebody who seems to be casting a negative judgment on your work and discouraging you from moving forward with your work. And if you ever get anybody who is that presumptuous, just remember to throw that advice out the window and or shut your ears to it.
Yeah.
Can I just add that I love high school English teachers, and they're doing they're doing really hard work. They really are, and I don't mean to like throw the profession under the bus. Just that they're required by state curriculums to do things that are detrimental to your fiction writing. But English teachers are awesome, and I love them very much.
We do have some great librarians here who are trying to change that narrative, just so you know. I hear it a lot.
Nice.
You've got a question, and then I'll go to you next, okay?
I just wanted my 5 minutes of fame. I have a question for Adib. You mentioned that you had trouble connecting with your roots and how writing the book helped you connect with your roots. I'd like to hear more about that. You know, whatever you feel comfortable sharing with 500 or so people.
Okay.
No pressure.
Yeah. So my dad came from Iran to the United States to go to college and met my mom in Missouri. She's white Missouri mixture. And growing up in Kansas City, I didn't really know any other Iranians. And eventually, most of my dad's family moved from Iran to Vancouver, British Columbia. And so then we would visit them like once a year for about 2 weeks every time. And me and my sister would go, and we'd be surrounded by all these cousins that are kind of our age, but had this shared experience of growing up in Iran and then moving to Canada that we had not experienced. We did not speak Farsi, and we'd like start conversations with them, and they'd start in English. And at some point, as happens with bilingual people, they just would switch languages, and my sister and I would be completely left behind. Also, it would be really wonderful to be around all these people that were my family and that like we had the same nose or whatever, and get that for 2 weeks at a time and then lose it and then not see them for a long time. And it felt like I had to meet them again every year over and over and then say goodbye every year. And also, like, that was one part of it. And the other part is that I grew up in suburban Kansas City, Missouri, basically the only Iranian that I knew at my school, aside from my sister. And I had to learn basically to perform whiteness to survive in school. And I had to kind of shove my Iranian-ness down and ignore it. And that kind of lasted until I was in college. And got to be around a slightly more diverse population in college. Sorry, that was very rambling. I hope that made sense.
No, that was great. Thank you.
Right.
Come on up.
You can ask us afterwards.
So, hi. I am the aforementioned 15-year-old young author.
Oh, nice.
And I wanted to ask if any of you had any tips on writing immensely complicated books. Because
Don't. Oh, God. Abandon ship, run away. So, my second book is the most ambitious thing I've ever written in my life. It's in 2 tenses at the same time, which is an idea that I came up with when my editor got that like mad fiery look in her face and was like, no one does, you should do it. And then like 3 weeks later while I was writing it, I was like, I should not do this. This is really hard.
Which 2 tenses? Hold on here. Which
It's
2?
in first and second.
Oh my gosh.
And no one writes in second. Like when you hear that, people are like, why? Yeah, it is very ambitious, and it is a fantasy story where not only does it have a linear plot, but then there are about 20 short stories in the story that are about the story. And then there are poems that are all in Spanish that are placed next to the English translation like you're in the Bible. It is a lot. I've never done anything like this. Have a document where you have all of the information separate from it. So I have a document that is just, what are all the coins in this world? What are all the cities? How do people talk? All these things. So when I'm actually just sitting there writing and I need to do dialogue, character building, any of that stuff, I can be like, oh, that's right. They don't wear pants in this universe. They wear clothing. I just mean like, when you're doing like fantasy, speculative fiction, you have to question everything you put in there. You can't say pants because what does pants mean? What kind of cloth is that made out of? What material is that made out of? So I figured out a lot of that stuff about 20% into the book because I was writing and I was like, oh, I need to do way more thought about what this is. So I have a separate document, and I use Scrivener to organize my drafts and stuff like that. And I keep track of all that extra information. Some of it may never make it in the book, but at least it's there and it's organized and I have a place that I can look. I am also a very, very, very strict outliner. And I find that helps keep my thoughts. And now, when I look, I can have like an overview of what the story is so I don't get lost.
My question is, by a complicated book, do you mean it has many different threads in it? Do you mean it? And so my question is, do you have a big blank wall in your house or your room that your mom will let you cover with white paper?
Yeah.
So I would. I guess it depends on whether you're visually oriented or whatever. But I right now have actually decided, okay, I'm saying goodbye to my bookshelves for a while, and I've covered over some of the bookshelves in my small office with white giant pieces of drawing pad paper, and I am actually recopying the outline that used to live on the back of my office door. That I Instagrammed once. But anyway, you could make columns, set out the different characters or the main different events on this giant piece of white paper, or some people do it on Post-it notes and tape. And sometimes I think seeing the whole thing as a big sort of graphic, I know it's very old school, but a graphic, document can help
like
you
a murder
to organize
board.
Your thoughts. Pardon me? What? Oh, yeah. What did you say?
Oh, I said like a murder board.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, great.
Like a serial killer,
Yeah.
like the threads are all, okay.
I think that can
I had a
sometimes.
different idea of what that meant. I was like, are you murdering people and keeping track of it?
Yeah. I started to write out a timeline, but then I got bored with it and scratched it out. So I don't know.
We see you. You can put your. I'm sorry, because you've been raising the 0 minute sign for like an hour, and I feel really bad that your hand's been up. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you all for being here.
There's a panel that me and a few other people on that's literally about writing tips. Yes. But you should come, and we can give you more detailed answers.
Sure. Thank
you. Okay, you're the best.
Thank you to our panelists and our moderator. Yeah, woo!
Right. Yes.
And to everyone in the audience who listened and asked questions. That's awesome. But we're going to don't move yet because we have a really important announcement about the short story contest and other things.
All right, if you need to stand up and take a little break and leave us while we do this, it's all right, or you can stay. It's up to you. Again, big round of applause for our first panel and moderator. Thank you.
Find us later.
She's going to come to the next panel.
Okay.
While they're shuffling their papers and stuff, just want to let you all know that if you want to see this again, you missed a comment or something.
Oh, no, that was visualizing this board of yours.
That you can go to MCTV, that's Millbrae Community Television, and look under YANOVCON, and this event will be archived there, and so you'll be able to view it on YouTube, so you can see this event again, hear the author's discussion in case you went, what'd they say again? What book did they recommend? I didn't catch that. What was that? I didn't hear it. So you'll be able to zip and fast forward into the information you want. A quick reminder, if you need to use the restrooms are located in the library, which is across the courtyard, straight ahead. The restrooms are when you enter the first doors, to your right. In the middle of the courtyard is the resource fair. There are several organizations that are here to help talk to our teens about any kind of difficult problems, because that is the theme of this year's YANOVCON. That was the theme that the short story contest was based on. So in conjunction with the YANOVCON, we do have a short story contest. The short story contest normally starts right after Thanksgiving and runs through the winter break, and then we announce the winners. We announced everything on Thursday because this year we had over 100 entries in our short story contest. This is for 6th through 12th graders. That was huge. My many thanks go to Central Middle School, who evidently made it a writing project. Do I get that right? Central Middle School. There's several of you in here, I went from 30 on noon on Monday to when I reopened the document again on Tuesday morning at 9 and said 111. I have to read 111 stories in 2 days. How am I supposed to do that? So we got it done, and we're very excited. Just so you get an idea of what they were supposed to write about, the theme was to craft an original short story that involves at least one main character who wants to share a secret, problem, or surprise about something in their home. Maybe they're scared to admit that they're unhoused. Maybe they're treated differently from their siblings. Maybe they're dealing with parental abuse, or a family member has substance abuse issues. That's the theme that they were supposed to come up with 500 words or less on a short story and submit to our contest. I'm very excited that several of our winners are here. I'm going to announce them all. We're going to start from honorable mention and work our way up for those. So honorable mention from Central Middle School. Wrote the story called The Bottom Drawer, Megan Pace. Megan, are you here? Our second honorable mention award from Ingrid B. Lacey School. Title of the story was Trepidation. Was is it Kartikaya Patel? Jay? All right, Jay. You want to come join us up here? The winners will be reading their stories once we get everybody up here. All right. One of our third place winners from Burlingame High School with a story called With All My Heart is Shida Shadaha. Is that Shahade? 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 Thank you. Another third place winner from Central Middle School wrote a story entitled Stormy Skies was Cara Griffin. Cara, I believe you're here. We talked on the phone. She was going to be here. Second place winner from 8th grader from Central Middle School wrote a story called Japanese Dexterity. This young man is not here today. He's at a science fair today. His name was Nicholas Kwok. Our other second place winner from Burlingame High School, the story was entitled Mercy, Ellen Fisher Sanderson. And our first place winner from Central Middle School with a story titled A Living Ghost, Bridget Sennett. Because there were over 100 entries, narrowing it down to the 12 finalists was hard. Kayla Marie read them with me. Because the people you stand here had multiple votes from multiple judges. I felt that I couldn't not recognize their work. So that's why you see 2 for second, 2 for third, 2 for fourth, because they were recognized by their stories kept coming up on the judges' top 4 list, so I felt that they should be done here. So you guys all in your little packets should have your stories. Take a deep breath. Do we want to go in any particular order? Do you guys, whoever feels brave first wants to come up and read their story, or not, it's their choice. All right. Do you want to go first?
I have to run up the miniature hill in order to see into Dad's room. I hurry to check up on him, even if he doesn't know that I am. I have to see through the rose bush and squint past the redwood trees, but at the top of the hill, I can see Dad. His hair has grown gray and he's become nothing but skin and bones. All he ever does is sleep, yet it looks like he doesn't know how. On the bedside table next to him lays old dinner plates, dirty clothes, and unswallowed pills. It hurts to see him like this. I wish that he was here sitting next to me, outside. It's been at least a month since he's last smelled the oak trees, dipped his toes into the relaxing creek, or even rolled down the small hill. Dad's avoided going outside of his room, which leaves me with more responsibilities. My face beats red at the thought that I might have caused all this. If I was never born, then Mom wouldn't have died. Then he wouldn't have depression. He's always had a pinch of darkness inside of him, but recently it's expanded into something much more. This has gone on for too long. I haven't shown up to school in weeks, and when I do show up, I'm always late. I put a pause on all of my after-school activities too. This isn't fair to me. I should be hanging out with my friends, Emily, Courtney, and my best friend Casey, like normal teenagers. I shouldn't be taking care of my own dad. Dad told me not to tell anyone, that this is a personal issue and it really isn't anyone's business. I respected him for long enough, but I don't think I can do it anymore. The light has aged into darkness, which reminds me that I need to make dinner. Why do I even try? It's not like he eats it anyway. I make up my mind. I need to tell someone. I squeeze through the rusting screen door and pick up the land phone. I dial Casey's number fast, knowing that if I waste any more time, I'll talk myself out of it. I'm not really sure what I'm expecting. Casey can't fix anything, but having someone to talk to would be nice. I'm alone most of the day, and it's becoming extremely lonely. My eyes fill with tears as I explain to Casey why I haven't been at school. She's still the same old Casey, understanding and kind. I can't even pretend to be strong anymore. I'm just so sick of pretending like I'm okay. I can't do this. I have to be strong for Dad, but it's just causing more stress. I know it's hard right now, but I'm going to help you get through this. Those words meant more to me than I can explain. Once they entered my ear, I never let them escape.
The rest of you, when you go to say your name and the title of your story, that was Bridget Sennett with Living Ghost.
My name is Megan Pace, and my story is called The Bottom Drawer. I smile. I found out that I got an A on my math test. Mom is going to be so proud of me, I think to myself. I walk home. When I walk through the door, Mom's on the phone, like always. Mom, I got an A on my test. She doesn't even look up at me. She's still on the phone. Puts up a finger, symbolizing wait. She doesn't even care. She never does. I walk into my room, tears streaming down my face. I feel like this happens every day. I jump onto my bed, bury my face into the pillow. I get that Mom's busy on the phone, but she does this every day, busy or not. Never pays attention to me. She only cares about my newborn brother. I can't stop crying. The feeling of anger sweeps over me. I just want to stop. I only knew one way to make this feeling stop. I look across the room, stare at the bottom drawer of my dresser. I try to resist, but I can't. I walk over there, as quiet as I can, worried Mom will walk into my room. I open the drawer slowly, revealing my jeans. I dig into the back to get a razor. I look at it, then my arm. I shouldn't do this, I thought to myself. I can't stop myself, though. I start to think if I should cut myself or not. I tap my finger on the top dress, tears still streaming down my face. I decide to do it. I dig the razor into my skin, tears dripping down on, then hit my skin. I shouldn't be doing this, I thought. I knew it was wrong to cut, but I don't know how to stop. The next morning I wake up with red marks down my arm, a frown on my face, because I knew I shouldn't have cut, but I can't stop. I can't tell anyone, afraid of judgment. I get dressed, wear a long sleeve shirt so no one can see my red scars. I walk downstairs. Mom's sitting at the table. I found this in your room, Mom says, worried. In her hand I see the razor, dried blood on it. I don't know what to say. Well, I try to explain. I don't want you to explain. I want to know why you kept this from me. I could have helped. I'm sorry, I said, cracks in my voice. I feel like crying. Why did I keep this from Mom, I think? Even though sometimes she ignores me, she's still my mother. She wants the best for me. I sigh. It's now been 3 weeks. I started going to a psychologist. Some might hate the doctor, but truly they help. I start to get ready for school. I open the bottom drawer of my dresser. Instead, I grab a pair of jeans.
Jack was walking down to his house, his steps loud and clear on the quiet street. He was making it deliberately slow so he wouldn't have to be in his house. His friend offered to drop him off in a hover car, but he declined. I could take my time. Clop, clop, clop went his shoes, impacting against the anti-grav mats. Clop, clop, clop. The sound of the time to his house where his drunk father was raging. Then it started raining. Flit, flat, flit, flat. The rain was comforting, but it was slightly stinging. Acid rain. It was a norm, but it was still a shock to feel what was once a joyous occasion become a morbid and gloomy time. His backpack straps began to steam. He goes under a shade. What was his father doing now in his drinking rage? Waiting for dinner? Watching Holovision? Yelling at his brother? It was the trepidation that was killing him. Plit, flat, plit, flat. He finally reached his house, pausing for a minute. Should he go in? Should he go to a friend's house? It was the trepidation that was killing him. Plit, flat, plit, flat. His father wasn't usually at home, just once a month. He was a contractor going to other cities. Once a month he was drunk, bossing around his family. Plit, flat, plit, flat. He went in the house, dodging a bottle thrown at him. His dad yelled, "Why haven't you made dinner yet? I'm starving." He ran straight to the kitchen, getting things from the food bank. He started adding the chemicals, making the food cook on its own. Put the food on his table and ran into his room. His brother sat on a bed, playing on his pod. "Hello, did you close the door?" "Yes," he said while closing it. Plit, flat, plit, flat. He raged today. He almost broke the Holovision and he gave me this. He showed a few nano patches along his arm. "Are you okay?" He nodded. Plit, flat, plit, flat. Jack sat there thinking, when will this end? For how long? Then he decided to go get his homework. He worked on it for a few hours, writing and calculating. He heard a ring on the pod. In a business voice that his dad used, he heard, "How can I help you?" There was a discussion. His dad slammed down the pod and stood up. Then he heard the door slam. He opened the door and ducked, but found that the room was empty. "He's gone," shouted Jack with relief. He went to get his dinner, then realized it was on the floor. Oh well, better the dinner than me. He started making another batch, then thought, how about next month? He got worried. It was the trepidation that was killing him.
I'm Shada, and my story is called With All My Heart. Mother dearest, you told me to always put family first. I tried my absolute best, but this time it wasn't enough. I never told anyone what really happened that night, but not out of fear, as you may be thinking, but to protect you. I would never put my family in danger, but I let it happen. I think it's about time you knew the truth. I was at home with Elodie, and we were watching a movie when he approached us. Elodie was always so fond of him, so she invited him to join us. Halfway through, I went to the bathroom, and he went to fetch some lemonade. I came back and found Elodie asleep. When I looked at him, there was a strange gleam in his eye. I should have realized that Elodie's freckled face was far paler than ever before. but I didn't until it was too late. I was devastated and vengeful, but he threatened to hurt you if I spoke up. And to seal the deal, he did something that made me wish I had consumed the poisoned lemonade as well. He set his eyes on hurting me, and nothing could stop him from doing so. I would have told you, but with leukemia eating its way through your frail body and his threat looming in the air, I couldn't. I couldn't tell you that your kind-hearted daughter was killed by the boy you raised as your own, not by some freak accident. Remember when you asked me why I didn't wear anything besides hoodies and jeans? I told you being a lacrosse goalie left me purple speckled. I didn't tell you that I quit lacrosse and that the bruises came regularly from the monster living in our own home. I didn't tell you that he was the reason I couldn't sleep. Your chemo sessions were always at night. You didn't need to know. I could take the punches, but not the thoughts. Some nights, I stayed up praying he wouldn't hurt you. Other nights, I would wonder why he wanted to hurt our family so badly. Eventually, I came up with a theory. The day you were moved to the hospice, he left. He was envious that you survived the crash when his parents hadn't, and he wanted your children to feel the same pain he had. Once he had accomplished this, he left. Forever. I'm sorry for keeping this all bottled up, but I couldn't allow myself to cause more heartbreak. With Dad and Elodie gone, I couldn't lose the last piece of my cause more heartbreak. With Dad and Elodie gone, I couldn't lose the last piece of my family. I do hope you can forgive me one day. With all my heart, your loving daughter. Her mother sniffles as she reads the final words and reaches for the phone. She punches in a number she knows by heart and begins to speak. On the other side of the line, the girl begins to sob out of relief, hurt, and all of the other pent-up emotions that had finally been freed.
My name's Ellen. My story is called Mercy. 5 minutes. 5 minutes until school ends, and my eyes are focused on the clock, but I'm back at home. The cacophony of yelling hurts my ears. The red second hand ticks slower and slower as it moves past every line, and I don't know if the clock is breaking or if it's all in my head. I notice how my knee bounces up and down. It brings me back to the real world, and I realize I blocked my teacher's voice out. I was too wrapped up in a reverie of my brother's eyes. I missed the color and the way they showed you what he was thinking. Now I might not ever see that again. 4 minutes. We used to be the dream family. Happy, healthy, whole. Our lives were so perfect. I should have known it would never last. 2 years ago, my brother Tom hit his head after a faulty CT scan showed no internal bleeding. He fell asleep and never woke up. God, I hope he does. There will be no more fights about money and healthcare prices and insurance and morality. And Tommy will be back from wherever he is, and he will never go back again. 3 minutes. My mother used to pray to God. Every night she asked him for mercy. Lord, protect Tom and Charlotte, she would say. When I stopped believing in him, I wish she would too. It was delusional to me to believe that a magic man would fix everything. She prays to Tom now. His picture has replaced her cross, and every night she yells, "Why won't you wake up? Do you even want to live?" Her voice is soaked with tears now, and her throat is filled with sand. I wish she would go back to believing in God, because we need a miracle. 2 minutes. I try to tell myself that taking on the second job is what has been making my mom on edge. It's just the stress that's caused the fighting, that my parents aren't actually thinking about unplugging the ventilator and feeding tube that have kept Tom alive for 2 years. That isn't true, though. He might never wake up, and we can't keep holding on to wisps of false hope, because Tom isn't dead, but he isn't alive either. It would be better to let his soul rest. If we did it, it would be a mercy killing. 1 minute. My head is filled with yelling. We can't keep doing this. It's murder. It's mercy. You monster, you wouldn't kill your own child, would you? I just wish he would wake up so that it would stop tearing us apart. My parents can't stand to look at each other and me. I'm getting ripped open. He is the one who is in a coma, but I am bleeding to death. I cry for mercy. Wake up, Tom. Too much blood has been lost over you. Wake up.
All right, if those didn't make everyone start thinking about things, pretty intense stories coming from our 6th through 12th graders. That's just a representative of what the other 100 stories where we had to read. Big round of applause for you guys.
So So the next session that's going to be in this room is how YA literature is breaking through the walls. So if you want to stay for that one, you're welcome to stay. If not, the other two rooms are out there. The community center is to the right, directly to the right as you walk out. And then the library room is kind of diagonal over here. There will be people outside to help direct you. Thank you all.